Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Belief Bag, where we talk about prophetic dreams and visions and exit and investment strategies for the wealth transfer and our crypto bags. This is Kelly, and my hope is with each video, you gain a little more belief. The first dream starts off in a warehouse with an attorney named Sidney Powell, and you may remember her from the election cases going on surrounding DJT. Now, Sidney's there with a group of investigators, and they're going through this evidence, and she's going through this evidence, and she kept rearranging it in this line. And the evidence, so you can picture it, was these physical picture frames, and they were maybe 5 to 8 feet tall, different sizes, and she's arranging them in different orders and rearranging. And the very last frame of all the pictures, she kept saying, I don't understand it, I don't understand it. It all leads back to Trump. And I felt like winning, but there was more to it there. And she kept, I don't understand it, I don't understand it. It all leads back to Trump. And the very last picture frame was Trump smiling. And she just kept rearranging and saying it over and over. And I don't get it. What's this evidence saying? But all I know is it all leads back to DJT. And then it comes to me, and I'm kind of hovering there in spirit, watching her. And it comes to me, and somehow I get her attention, and I have her come with me up to the loft. There's a loft that allows you to peer down onto the evidence that she was arranging in a line. And I said, look, I said, it makes up a city skyline. I go, and it made up a silhouette of a city skyline. I'm like, look, it makes up a city skyline. And we were in awe. And then the scene changes, and we're down below again, and we're in this huddle. And Sydney saying, I'm going to basically blow this city up. And I saw rats blowing out of the sewer. So, I took it as I'm going to expose what went on here. And so that was the end of that dream. And where I say that she said, I don't understand it, I don't understand it, as she was rearranging the evidence over and over, and that she said it all leads back to DJT, I felt like that the reason that November 3rd and November 4th, the way it went down and the election being taken from DJT is because of what happened in this city that we're going to talk about in a minute, in this city skyline. The second part of this is a vision, and I see this abstract block 7 floating around the edges of my vision, kind of bouncing off the edges of my vision like a screensaver would on a computer. And this block 7 lands on the words fake news. Okay. So the vision changes then. And now the block 7, this abstract block 7 is in front of me like a drawing, and then it morphs into an actual scene. And the scene is a live scene where I'm in, and it's like I'm facing this set of windows in a high rise looking out onto a city. And the block 7 is now highlighting the window frame. And so I'm only seeing a portion of the window frame, and the portion I'm seeing is in the shape of a block 7. So I'll put a picture up here so you understand what I originally drew the block 7 in my notes, and then this is what it looked like when it morphed into the window frame. So now I'm stepping into this vision, or stepping up to the windows in this vision, and I'm peering to my left and to my right, and very close is other high rises, other skyscrapers that go even taller than the floor I'm on in my building. And so I realize I'm in Manhattan or New York City, and I am peering ahead. So the abstract portion of the block 7, which was unique about it, was the middle section. You remember, this is the drawing I put in my notes. And this middle section here is like a tower. And the top of the tower had like smoke or flames coming out of it. And so that now is a physical tower that I'm peering straight ahead at. And I wrote in my notes here that it appeared to be like the towers on that day in 2001, that September day in 2001. So that was the end of that vision. And then it was tied all together for me. One day I was driving down the road and I passed this sign every single day. And it said Skyline View. And I remembered my dream with Sidney Powell. And I remembered the evidence all linking back to a city skyline. And then I remembered my vision of how it morphed into this window frame, highlighting this black 7 as the window frame, but this black 7 was highlighting one single tower. And so my sister came home last year in the summer, and there's 8 of us in my family, and my oldest sister and I are really close. And I was telling her some of my dreams and visions, and I said, this one was really unique. I said, I wrote in my notes that it reminded me of that day in 2001 and the towers. And I said, I just didn't really make much sense because there's not 2 towers in this abstract block 7, it's just 1 tower. And she goes, Kelly, there was more than 2 towers that fell that day. Remember? Building 7. And then it was like aha moments going off in my head. It was like everything just started. Oh my goodness, I cannot believe that I had a vision and a dream about that day in 2001. Before I share this third vision, which I first thought was completely unrelated, I want to mention back in 2001, of course, I knew that there was 3 buildings that fell that day, but I was 21 and, as life went on, I just kind of forgot because there wasn't much emphasis on that 3rd building clearly. And now I know why. But, at some point in time, I realized that not everything added up for that day, and but I just never really dug into it much. So when I'm stating these things and the connections, I just wanted to mention that first, that I think there's a reason now with what I'm sharing here that I never spent much time focusing on it, because then I feel like this vision and this connection is much clearer that way. And not muddied up by my preconceived notions. So I wanted to mention that before I mention this 3rd vision. So again, in this 3rd vision, which I again thought was unrelated, I am coming into the room from a corner of the room like I was a hidden camera. And this room reminded me of a skinny, long kind of loft in maybe a city. And this loft was kind of barren, and there was a single chair in the middle of the room, and there was a man that was circling the chair and sat down, and he was older, let's say in his 60s, older than me, in his 60s ish, and he was doing something that he shouldn't have been doing. And I felt like he was watching a girl or a scene that was sexual in nature, and it could have been involving trafficking or something along those lines, and that's kind of the feeling I got. But I felt like the reason I was shown this was that he was being videoed. He did not know it. And I wrote in my notes that I felt like it was going to be used for blackmail of some sort. Again, so he was definitely participating or looking at or viewing something that he shouldn't have been doing, sexual in nature, maybe with underage or trafficking. And so that was a very short vision, and that was it for that. Then in, I want to say May of 2023, I was trying to put all of this together. And I was in this major prophetic flow. It was like as soon as I thought of something, I would have the answer, or something. As soon as something entered my mind, the answer would be there too. And it was like I was being downloaded with information throughout the day. So I felt like I was being led to work on this video about the city skyline. And as I'm sitting down and I'm kind of getting distracted, I'm looking at my laptop and my emails, and I come across an email that was completely unrelated. But I felt like my eyes zoomed in on it. And, I've said in previous videos that when I do that, it's something I'm supposed to pay attention to. And so I felt like, okay, Kelly, open that email. So I opened the email, and it really had nothing to do with this video. But it reminded me to look at what was happening with some financial meetings in the United States this year and the dates. So I hopped over to the website for this federal agency, and I looked at their website. And as soon as I got onto their website, the chair of this organization, his picture took me, when I saw his picture, which I've seen him many of times on YouTube or X, when financial meetings are happening in the United States, I've seen him many times. But when I saw this particular picture on this website, it took me back into that vision of the man circling the chair and watching something that he shouldn't have been watching, participating in something he shouldn't have been participating in, and being videotaped, that I felt was going to be used for blackmail. Okay, so I realized that vision was being connected to what I was working on. And I thought, all of a sudden, Kelly, look up where he worked in 2001. And I recognized this man, right? So I'm like, look up where he worked in 2001. And he worked for a hedge fund private equity firm, and he was a partner in that firm. Well, come to find out, I'm finding in minutes, this is all being, kind of laid out for me. This private equity firm is said to have made huge amounts of money off of what happened after that day in 2001 from military contracts. And I'm going to spell the equity firm's name. So, because what happens if you say the wrong words here on YouTube. So it's spelled Carlyle, and it's a private equity firm. And this man that I recognized from this picture was the partner in this private equity firm in 2001 when the attacks on our towers happened. And this private equity firm just happened to have made a ton of money from what happened afterwards with military contracts. Okay, so that's that part of my realization. So let's tie this all together. In the first dream is Sidney Powell in a warehouse lining up all this evidence. And she's like, I don't understand it. I don't understand it. It all leads back to DJT. And then I show her that the evidence all lines up and makes up a certain city skyline. I don't know what city skyline. And then we're in a huddle, and she's like, I'm going to expose this. I'm going to blow this city up. And I see rats blowing out of the sewer. So the second part of this was the Block 7. And this Block 7 originally started like a screensaver bouncing around the edges of my vision, and it landed on the words fake news. So I believe media is going to be tied into this somehow. Then the Block 7 morphed into an actual scene. So I'm standing in front of this Block 7, and now the Block 7 morphs into the window frame of a city high rise. And I'm standing in the city high rise looking out to the city, a very crowded city skyline. And I'm very close. I feel like skyscrapers are right next to me, all around me. And I feel like I'm in Manhattan. And now the window frame is the Block 7, and it's highlighting one single building out in the distance. And that building I felt like had smoke or something coming out of its roof. And now I believe that building is Building 7. The third part of this was a vision, and it was of one single man in this city loft with one single chair, and he's circling this chair to sit down. And what was unique about this was that I was coming in like I was a hidden camera from the corner of the room. And he was being videoed. He didn't realize it. I think it was going to be used for blackmail. But he was viewing something sexual in nature. I don't know if it was underage or trafficking or both. But he was being videoed, and I felt like this was going to be used for blackmail. Then I felt that the hidden camera was connected to the man with the island. And I don't know much about this, but I know that he had cameras in his homes, and he used what he videoed as blackmail of some sort. And so I felt like these hidden cameras was connected to the man with the island, and that scheme he had running, catching people in these precarious positions, politicians, elites, things like that, and using it against him as blackmail. So I also realized that God was connecting what I was working on that day, the video I was working on with the city skyline and the evidence and Building 7, to this man that was being blackmailed. And so I immediately thought, check where he worked in 2001. So I checked where he worked, and he worked, this man that was in this vision where he was circling the chair, he worked as a partner in a firm, a private equity firm, that is said to have made huge amounts of money off of military contracts after the fact of those attacks. I also realized that that private equity firm is said to supposedly be a arm of a 3-letter agency. That same day of those attacks, this private equity firm was also having, or supposedly having, meetings with family of the man that was ultimately blamed for those attacks that day from another country. Then it was like God was showing me that I'm on the right track here, because he also showed me that there is a connection between that firm and the man with the island and his ex-girlfriend, and let me explain. So his ex-girlfriend just had a trial. On that trial, there was a juror that almost got the trial conviction thrown out after the fact for some things he said, I think maybe to the media. And something that happened to him as a child, he never disclosed, but he said he swayed other jurors with this information. And this juror just happened to work for that same private equity firm that is said to be connected to that day in 2001, and their large amounts of money made off of military contracts. I was shown a painting on X of a former president, that it was like God was saying, Kelly, you are connecting the dots, right? That there is a connection between the man with the island and the what happened that day in 2001 in that particular building. And how I was shown this was there was a painting that was discovered in, I believe it was the Manhattan home of the man with the island that supposedly hung himself in prison or jail. And this painting was of a former president, the younger BUSH, and he was sitting Indian style throwing paper airplanes at 2 crumbled Jenga towers. And so this, again, was found in the man with the island's home, one of his homes, and it was of the former president, and it was an image of him throwing paper airplanes at 2 crumpled Jenga towers, pointing to that day in 2001. This man was so bold that it was almost like his paintings in his house were even blackmail, pieces of blackmail. And so I don't know the full extent of it, but I do know per these dreams and visions, that I believe there's going to be a connection between the election evidence, what happened in 2001, the man with the island, the blackmail, the trafficking, the money, how they've been able to control so many people. And I also think the man that was in the vision being videotaped, he's ultimately making huge decisions for our financial sector and our monetary policies. And so why God showed me him out of everybody, and it leads back to our financial sector and what's happening right now. I want to state that, again, I'm not going to mention the name of the man that I believe was in the vision. I could be wrong. It was a vision. I could be misinterpreting something. But with the other connections, I don't personally believe so. But again, it's not important to me. It's more important to me if God's working on him in any way, because I believe at every stage of every level of our life, God is working on us, and I'm not tearing that down in any way. Second, AI, words I say, words that are in comments, we have to be very careful that this channel doesn't get pulled. So that's another reason we got to make sure that we don't say the wrong thing on here or put it in comments. Thank you all for listening. Please pray with me that exposure comes out, the truth comes out, and that we're able to heal as a nation. Thank you all. God bless. So I stopped my recording and I looked at the time, and it's exactly 9:11. How amazing is that? God is good, and I just needed to share that last little bit.